Hey everyone, my name's Claire. For any of those who I haven't met yet, I am here today to share with you and to teach a masterclass about something that I am really passionate about. And it's actually something that it's how I got into this work and how I got into what I'm doing now. So for starters, my name's Claire and I'm from Australia, if you can't tell by the accent. I have been in Australia since the whole pandemic. Previous to that, I was living in Bali for 4 years, and I was actually hosting health detox fasting retreats there. And it was there where I really kind of dove more into my intuitive healings, into my energy work, and into my embodiment mentorship, I would say. But it was a long time before that where I kind of got a kick in the butt from the universe that, like, this is the path that you have to take, which I will dive into a little bit more a bit later. But just to give you a brief background of myself, I am a meditation and yoga teacher, and I'm a kinesiologist and somatic therapist. But what I really love doing, I've done other little modalities as well, but what I really love doing is kind of picking a little bit of each study and teachings that I've done and I've dove into, and really bring it into my body and really use my intuition as my number one key. Yeah, so I've always been, sorry, my words aren't coming to me. I've always been a very sensitive, like a hypersensitive person, quite intuitive from a really young age. So that part of myself has always been quite here, but I've always tried to stuff it down and to try and sweep it under the carpet, because it wasn't really explained to me when I was younger, and I didn't know how to work with this part of myself. And what I really guide my clients and what I do now is just providing them with more self-awareness. Yeah, it's really looking at these parts of our psyche, really looking at these parts of the unseen and our subconscious that we can't necessarily see with our eyes, but we can feel within our body. Yeah, whether that's physical sensation, emotional, or mental sensation as well. And with that, we just hold so much that we're so unaware of. We hold so much that we're so unaware of that has a direct impact of how we live our lives. And that's really what I'm going to dive into today. We're diving completely into the subconscious. We're diving into what we store there, what the subconscious even is, where we store things within our body, how they manifest within our body, and then how we can start to try and maybe navigate and invite a little bit more self-awareness so we have a greater understanding of why we are the way that we are. Yeah, because a lot of the time we don't necessarily know. If you get triggered and you get super angry at something, or if things just keep happening, these same patterns keep playing out, but they play out in different ways, and it just keeps coming. If you keep getting in that toxic relationship, or you're struggling with hyper stress, or you've been through this trauma that you keep getting like flashes of. So before we dive into any of this, I hope you can hear me okay, because it is like raining so hard where I am right now. But before we dive into any of this, I want to just do a little meditation. So just to get into our bodies. So if you just want to release anything from your hands, release any books, any pens, and just taking a moment to close down your eyes. And I just want you to take a few deep breaths. Inhaling through your nose and just sighing out your mouth. I just want you to let go of your day. Letting go of what you have to do tomorrow, or letting go of your night's sleep if it's still with you. And just bringing yourself into this present moment. So just taking a moment just to invite all parts of yourself in. Inviting in north, east, south, and west. And as you do that, I want you to bring your awareness down to your sit bones. And I want you to feel the connection between your sit bones and the chair beneath you, or the couch, or the ground, whatever you're connected to. And from this space, I want you to imagine that you've got a cord coming from your sit bones, going into your spine, but coming all the way down into the earth. Coming all the way down into the center of the earth. Completely anchoring you in to this space today. Keeping you grounded and safe and supported in this space. Beautiful. And then I just want you to just let your body know that you're going to be receiving some information. You're going to be receiving some insight, some wisdom. So I want you to allow yourself to be open to receiving whatever you need to receive today. Beautiful. We'll take one more deep inhalation through the nose. And as you exhale, just exhaling out your mouth, and we'll just bring our chin to our chest. Beautiful. When you're ready, you can slowly start to bring yourself all the way back. Okay, amazing. So I'm just going to quickly share screen here before we get into this. Move myself. So I feel like, well, this is such a broad and vast topic that I am presenting today. And we're only really going to touch the surface. But really, what I am just so passionate about is this felt experience and this ability we have to feel and to become aware of all of these unseen things that are happening in ourselves, in our body, and in our psyche. Because sometimes our conscious mind, this thinking mind and this chatter, can really rob us. It's almost like we're walking through life like this sometimes. It can rob us of our felt sensation. Yeah. And we're not really taught about the subconscious. We are, like, there's a lot of stuff coming out now and in the wellness realm, but a lot of the time we're not really taught about the unseen. We don't necessarily know that there's any correlation between the unseen or the felt and how that has a direct impact of how you live your life and how your physical body feels. Yeah. So what we're really going to be diving into, we're going to, like I said, diving into the unseen, we're diving into the felt experience, and we're diving into the psyche. Yeah. And when I say psyche, I'm really talking about our emotional body, our mental body, and also our physical body as well. But our physical body in relation to what's manifesting. Yeah. Because with our physical body, if we have an ailment, or if we have like a sickness or a cough, or our stomach isn't right, we get constipated or we have diarrhea, we immediately like go to the doctor and get a pill, or we go to the naturopath and get herbs, or we kind of like to put band-aids on things. But what I'm really doing today is kind of going underneath the surface into the branches and seeing what is actually here and what needs to be shifted, transmuted, purified, or even just being brought to the surface, just allowing this to come into your conscious awareness. Yeah. So I just want to ask you the question, like, what does wellness actually mean to you? Because a lot of the time when we think of health, like, and really mainstream health, we think of like, how much we exercise and what we eat. Yeah. But health and wellness is just so much more vast than that. It is so much more complex, and there's so many more different aspects. That's such a tiny little part of wellness. Yeah. Because you could be taking, all the supplements, you could be eating really healthy, organic, wholesome food, you could be exercising, you could even be meditating. But if you aren't actually looking at your wellness and your health as a whole, if you're not looking at those parts of yourself that you can't necessarily see, yeah, or these emotions you might just want to keep voiding and pushing down, your health will eventually suffer. Yeah. And our bodies are so much smarter than we give them credit for, like so much smarter than we give them credit for. It's just learning how to read them and really inviting that self-awareness. Yeah. Exploring yourself on like a cellular level. Yeah. An energetic level. So that's really what I'm bringing for you today, this evening, this morning, wherever you are, is I'm inviting this self-awareness. So I'm giving you the opportunity to just kind of think about things maybe a little bit differently. Yeah. And I'm not saying that my way is the correct way. I am just sharing from what I've learned and from my own personal experiences and how that's had a direct effect on how I live my life. And when it comes down to it, like when we go right back to the basics, it's literally just self-awareness. It's learning self-awareness and learning how to read your body, your mind, your psyche. Yeah. And with that, I always say, I heard this from a teacher once. I forget his name, so I'm sorry that I can't tell you that right now. But he was like, self-awareness is like a superpower. Yeah. And that resonated so much within my body, because I was like, oh my God, it really is a superpower, because if you are self-aware, you just know how to live better. Yeah. You know what you can handle, you know what you can bring in. You know, like if something it doesn't feel right, you listen to your intuition, so you're more inclined to live a more fulfilling and purposeful life. And you listen to your boundaries as well. You actually listen and understand your body. Yeah. And your body is such a mirror for what's happening in the subconscious. Yeah. So if there's some tweaks and some elements that don't feel necessarily right in your body, there's probably some stuff going on in your subconscious. Yeah. So let's unpack this term subconscious a little bit more. So I've got this little triangle here, right? And I want you to think of this as your whole being, not just like your physical body, but all aspects of yourself. Yeah. And when we look at this tiny little tip of the iceberg up here, this is our conscious mind. Yeah. And when I talk about conscious mind, I'm talking about that more activated part, or that more heated part of our body. Yeah. And it's our more masculine driven part of ourselves. It's the rational part of ourselves. It's the analytical part of ourselves. It's the logical part of ourselves. It's the part that loves structure. Yeah. It's the part where our ego sort of lies and manifests. This isn't a bad thing, by the way. We need this part of ourselves. Yeah. But the thing is, we live majority of our life just in this tiny little part up here. Yeah. And so when I say we need this part of ourselves, like this part tells us when we have to brush our teeth, when we need to have a shower, when we go to bed, when we need to go to bed. You know, it's there's so many benefits to this part, and it's our motivation. It's that part that really drives us and gets stuff done. Yeah. But we as a society just live constantly from this space. Yeah. When we have all of this down here that we're just not tapping into at all. And, you know, there's sides that if we tap into that, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yeah. But there's also sides to this. If we tap into that, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. And so with the subconscious, so this part of ourselves that we can't necessarily see, but it's there. This is where we store all of our conditionings, all of our belief systems, any unprocessed emotion or sensation that we love to avoid as human beings, any interaction you've had, any conversation, anything that's had a felt experience within your body that you may not necessarily have processed, it stores on a cellular level. Yeah. And we like to keep that in our subconscious. And so this is where we like to keep all the things that we don't necessarily love to feel. Yeah. And I'm really talking about here, but there's a lot that we store here, but I want to talk about these emotions. Yeah. Because these emotions that we store have been developed from these belief systems that we've hardwired from when we were younger. Yeah. So under here, we love to store things like fear, things like guilt, abandonment, any trauma that we haven't dealt with, feelings of unworthiness, loneliness, shame, jealousy, rejection, uncertainty. You know, all these things that don't necessarily feel so nice in our body, we store here. Yeah. If we're not processing them. Yeah. And the reason that we don't process them, which I will go into in more depth a little bit later, is because we're never taught to. Yeah, we're always taught to run away from these sensations. As human beings, we hate to feel uncomfortable. We get really awkward in that situation. So instead of staying in uncomfortability for a little while, we stuff them down. Yeah. And that's when they lock in to our subconscious. So I want to explain this a little bit better with a story. So one of my first clients, when I was living in Bali and I was working, I was hosting fasting retreats, right? So we would do 7-day, 10-day, 12-day fasting retreats. And when you fast, it's like fast tracking yourself into these states of hypersensitivity, because you don't have any food, any alcohol, any stimulants that are numbing your senses. Yeah. So you're more susceptible to feel things. And when that happens, a lot of your kind of stuff comes up. Yeah. The stuff that you haven't necessarily dealt with, a lot of that can kind of come up. And with this, I guide people through their energetic body, basically, and their old conditionings and their subconscious, to see what might be there that's having an effect on their life today. So I had this client, he was 54 years old, and he came to me and he was miserable, right? He started having all these health concerns. Like he had high cholesterol, he was having some heart problems. He was kind of like, his health was deteriorating. He was really fatigued. He wasn't sleeping. And when you saw his body, he was really quite stiff. Yeah, he was quite like locked in the jaw, and his skin had redness. It had like a redness tone to it. Yeah. And the interesting thing was, I'm just going to shut this window quickly. Whoop. Sorry, it's so loud with that rain. That's a bit better. So the interesting thing was, from an outsider's perspective, he had like the picture perfect life on paper. And what I mean by that is what society, puts up on a pedestal, what we strive towards in societal conditioning. Yeah. So he had, a really great job. He actually came from not a lot of money, and he created this amazing business. He had a really great business partner. He had a wife and kids. He lived in Sydney in a really like high-end area in this big house, and he had a holiday house at like every continent in the world. Like, from an outsider's perspective, you would think like he is like doing so well. He's really kind of got it all going on. Yeah. But the thing was, he was miserable, and he did not understand why. And he actually said to me, Claire, I did everything right. I did everything I was supposed to do. So why am I feeling like this? And we had a session together, and it went all the way back to when he was 4 years old. And he was sitting around a table with his dad, he was 4 at the time, his younger brother, and his mum. And he was really upset, and he was crying and crying at the dinner table. And his dad said to him, son, don't cry. Crying's for weak. Don't you ever let me see you cry again. Like, men don't cry. We do not show emotion. We are strong, X, Y, Z. He kind of really drilled it into him, which wasn't his dad's fault at all, because he was just teaching what he learned. Yeah. But from that moment, from him saying, men don't cry, don't be weak, that's showing weakness, he created this belief system. Okay, I can't show any emotion. Like if I feel any of these uncomfortable things, I cannot show them. Yeah. And so I'm just going to stuff them right down. And he was to the point where he had really, I call it monkey anger. When I say monkey chatter up in this conscious mind, what I mean by that is that constant thinking thought pattern that we love to spin around up there. But he had this monkey anger. And what I mean by that is something would trigger him. Like, for example, his wife would be like, can you pick up your dirty washing? And it would just snap him and he would be like, ah, and it's like this rage. Yeah. It's this real kind of monkey impulse anger. He had it, to be honest, I've had thousands of clients now, but he probably had the worst monkey anger that I've ever seen. And you could see it in his body. Like you could see he had been suppressing for so long, because like I said, he was so stiff. Yeah. When we would do yoga, he couldn't lift his arms above his shoulders. Yeah. He was just so incredibly stiff, but he had been suppressing anything he felt on a deep level since he was 4. Yeah, so 48 years, he hadn't even allowed himself to feel anything. And when we went back to this scenario, he had a huge release and he just started crying and crying and crying. It was like the water floods just came and it just released. And he was like, I can't believe that I have just been storing everything for so long and not allowing myself to feel. Yeah. And he didn't even know that he was doing this. It was very unconscious. But he picked up this belief system from when he was younger that was having such an effect on his life. Yeah. And things like he was starting to fight or having problems with his business partner. He couldn't connect properly to his wife and his children. Like things were starting to break open. Yeah. And when we are from the ages of when we're in the womb to when we're 7, we hardwire our whole belief system. Yeah. So we hardwire on a neurological level our whole belief system. And what I mean by that is when we are that young age, little kids, they're like sponges and they just kind of absorb everything. So we're absorbing our surroundings, and that is how we create our inner belief systems to live our life. Yeah. So with this, when we're older, we can obviously create belief systems when we're older as well. But the belief systems that were created when we were younger, they're a lot harder to unravel. So we actually really have to like unlearn what we've learnt to bring a new belief system in. Yeah, which just doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. And you can kind of think of some things now, maybe that, what do I believe? What do I believe like that? Like even with emotions, like how do I feel about emotions? Do I actually let myself express my emotions? Do I let myself feel them at least? Or do I numb them? Do I push them down? Yeah. For a really long time, I myself, when I was younger, I was quite reserved. I was quite shy as a little girl. And people would always say that I was very calm and I was very collected. Yeah, because I wouldn't lash out. I wouldn't get angry. I wouldn't, yell at anyone. I would always kind of keep my cool. But the thing was, I was like, okay, this is good to keep quiet and to just go along with, whatever is happening. And I'll just keep my cool and I'll keep quiet because I'm getting praised for what's happening. And so I'm just going to keep really quiet. Yeah, that was my whole belief system, like to be the good girl and to keep quiet. Yeah. And that I was actually super, super sensitive too. So things affected me so deeply on the inside that I was not showing on the outside. Yeah. And it wasn't until I, late years of high school and ended high school that I really started to come into this and tap out of this belief system that I was leading my whole life by, because it just wasn't serving me. I was getting super stressed and I was just sort of drinking a lot, just numbing the sensations that I wasn't allowing myself to feel. Yeah. So we should be called human doings, not human beings, because we find it so hard to just be. Yeah. And the reason we find it so hard to just be is because when we actually stop and when we actually give ourselves space, that's when we start to listen to the pullings of our body, of our subconscious. That's when it starts to kind of bubble up to the surface. Yeah. And that's why we keep doing. Not the only reason why, but it's an avoidance. Yeah. We avoid by numbing ourselves and throwing ourselves into something, anything that's moving. So we avoid these sensations, we avoid these emotions, unprocessed emotions that we haven't dealt with because they don't feel comfortable. But the way that we do that is we, throw ourselves into something. So we'll throw ourselves into work. We'll throw ourselves into partying or drinking or taking drugs or having sex or socializing, or we throw ourselves into our kids' lives, our children's lives, or we go for the food, we start eating like a lot. And we can even like overdo healthy things as well, like things that are quite good for us, like for example exercising. We can throw ourselves into over exercising. Yeah. Or even like meditating. We can throw ourselves into meditating that it actually becomes a little bit toxic, like you're not actually living on this earth. Yeah. Or we can throw ourselves into all this like self-development work. Like it's amazing and it's so inspiring and bringing you so much awareness. But if we are just constantly doing it and bypassing what's actually here, we're not getting anywhere. Yeah. So I'm just going to take a sip of my water. I just wanted to really mention that because things like drugs and alcohol and, smoking cigarettes or, working nonstop, like we kind of know that they numb our physical sensation. Like you can feel the numbness, you can feel the relax. Yeah. But things like food is a huge one. And food literally numbs your felt sensation. That's why we go for that like emotional eating, because you're trying to like not feel what you're feeling. There's a reason why we automatically go for the food. Yeah, but we don't necessarily realize that that is like quite a big trigger for numbing ourselves and for avoiding something. So as I said before, our body is a mirror to our subconscious, and our bodies are really, really smart, and they're actually quite resilient. Yeah, we can suppress for a really long time, but things will eventually, things will eventually come up to the surface. I'm just going to, here we go. So when things come to the surface, we can feel them physically within our body. And I'm really talking about our emotional health here. So like I said before, our beliefs, our emotions stem from our belief systems. Yeah. And how you kind of uncover your belief systems, I'm going to give you some tools at the end that you can really reflect on and dive into that will uncover some of these patterns that might be happening. Yeah. And but what happens when we have these belief systems is then we kind of, these belief systems that aren't serving us, for example, like mine, which was to keep quiet. Then whenever we feel these feelings of shame, guilt, sadness, loneliness, rejection, which we all feel, they're not bad sensations at all. They're really relevant for what we're experiencing, but they only cause havoc when we push them down. Yeah. And when we push them down for a certain amount of period, our body gives us little triggers. It gives us little symptoms and little signs that, hey, there's something here that you need to look at. Yeah. And like I said in the beginning, our bodies are so much smarter than we give them credit for. So some of the symptoms, neck and back pain. So where your skull meets your neck, that's where we hold a lot of our cellular memory. Yeah. So a lot of things that might have happened when you were younger, if you get really strong neck and back pain, then neck and shoulder pain, then, you know, there might be some stuff that we need to look at there. Insomnia is a huge one because your body is trying to process at night what you're not allowing yourself to process during the day. Yeah. Things like hormone imbalance. So a lot of different hormone imbalance, right? Because when we're suppressing, we're actually stressing the body. And when we're stressed, our hormones go whacked. Yeah, it kind of brings us out of balance. So we have a lot of hormonal imbalance. There we go. Got there in the end. UTI and bladder infections. So this is a really, really interesting one, and one that I have experienced with myself, and I experience it within a lot of clients that come and see me. So again, not all of these are because of you're not processing your emotions, or you've got stored trauma or stored stress or whatever, but these are little indications. Yeah. So UTI, if you are in a relationship and you're constantly getting a UTI and there's nothing physiologically wrong with you on a biological sense, I mean, that it is a really big indication that maybe you're not actually honoring your truth, and maybe you're not in an alignment at that time with the specific partner. It's very much to do with how you relate to your intimate partners. Yeah, because we hold so much energy in our wombs. Yeah, and around that bladder area. So this is so interesting, and I see it so much. Yeah. Things like acne and rashes and skin disorder, this is all a lot of heat, excess heat in the body. Yeah. And when we think of heat, we think of that like anger and that resentment and that like real like frustrated kind of emotion. Yeah. And what's happening is our body is trying to purge what we're not allowing ourselves to feel. So normally, in this sense, it comes out a lot within our skin. Yeah, things like asthma can have a lot to do with, because asthma comes from the lungs, yeah, and we hold a lot of our grief in our lungs. So if there's maybe some stuff that you haven't grieved, or there's some things that you didn't know you had to grieve, or you were meant to, or you kind of just sort of stuffed it down, there might be some stuff to look at there. Lower back pain, so this really around like your sacrum area and your hips, this has a lot to do with your support, so your family dynamics, again, your relationships, your sense of safety and sense of money and support in the world. Yeah, digestive issues where we hold like all of our kind of midline is our center, our energy center, that stores a lot of our self-worth. Yeah, so a lot of our worthiness and our confidence and our inner power comes from our digestive system. Yeah, and if you get a lot of bloating, you know, if you get diarrhea, constipation, any IBS stuff, a lot of the time it has a lot to do with your lack of self-worth. Yeah, because we really hold that in our stomach. Things like constipation is a big sign that you're really resisting something, resisting change. You're not allowing yourself to let go. Yeah, because when we're constipated, we're really holding on. Yeah, things like headaches, migraines, lockjaw. This a lot of the time is to do with excess stress and a lot of stimulation kind of coming in. Yeah. Immune disorders, a lot of autoimmune especially, are really developed on this like energetic level. Yeah, so a lot of things that have happened with us in the past, they kind of come out in like an autoimmune response. Yeah, which I've also had experience myself. So according to traditional Chinese medicine, they believe that we hold different emotions in different organs of the body. So they believe that your liver is where you store your anger, your lungs, grief, like I spoke about, your heart is love, kidneys, fear, and your stomach is your unworthiness. So this is a really interesting one because I run fasting retreats. That's part of something, a little part of what I do. But we do a liver flush, yeah, every fasting retreat. And on liver flush day, people seem to get a little bit angry. Yeah, they get a little bit frustrated. They get a little bit hot and heated. Like it's like a really hot summer's day and everything's just a bit too much. Yeah, that's kind of the sensation that they experience because your liver is actually starting to detox. That is working at a fasting retreat for the last 6 years. That is so interesting. Yeah. And things like grief, I've noticed when there's been a loss, a lot of people will end up sick if afterwards. Yeah, after the funeral, after however you celebrate their death, they will get quite sick. Yeah, normally with like a really chesty kind of symptoms because they're storing a lot of grief in their lungs. Yeah, and it's your lungs trying to detox, trying to process. Yeah. your heart, things like love. Like this is one that you can literally feel. Yeah. If you've had a child, or you've ever been in love, or you just love going out in nature, or whatever it is, you can physically feel your heart opening. Like you can feel this chest space and your body opening up. Yeah, that's like a physical reaction. And when you're like unsure, or you're going through heartbreak or heartache or something, your body will naturally kind of retract in. Your body will naturally kind of go like this, because your body's like trying to protect yourself in a way. Yeah. Kidneys is where we store a lot of our fear. So again, if you do have a lot of that kind of mid to lower back pain, a lot of it is fear, and a lot of it is actually revolved around money and around safety. Yeah, because we're quite in that fear scarcity mindset, and we've all been in this over the last 2 years with what's been going on. Yeah. And then again, your stomach is where we store the unworthiness. Yeah, a lot of our self-worth stuff is always in the stomach. So when I was 18, I was in quite a bad accident. So it was my first year out of high school. I just turned 18, and I fell off a balcony. I fell off a double-story balcony. It was probably about 8 meters high. And I really kind of did a lot of damage. So I did a lot of damage to my face. I broke my nose, I broke my skull, my cheekbone, like pretty much my whole face was smashed in. Yeah. And like you couldn't recognize me. My nose was like out here. This lip like literally covered my whole chin. Like I looked like a monster. And when this happened, because I had that belief system to keep quiet and everything's good and we'll just keep on going, I stuffed everything down. Yeah. And there was a lot of emotions, a lot of stuff that was happening at that time, and how it actually happened. There was a lot of stuff connected to this, but whenever anyone would be like, "Are you okay?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm all right. It's okay. Yeah, I'm definitely fine." Have you heard the person that's like, "I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine." And I feel like when people are saying that, you're not necessarily fine. It's like you're trying to convince yourself. So yeah, thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, so I literally fell off this balcony, and I don't remember it either. I was in Bali at the time, and I was with 4 of my girlfriends, and they would come in. So I fell off the balcony. Obviously, I've gone into hospital. I don't remember any of it. I don't even remember being at the place where I fell off, and I still don't remember to this day like what actually happened. And I just remember waking up in hospital, and there was about like 10 doctors over me, and they were like, "She's going to need extensive plastic surgery. She's got brain damage, like blah, blah." They were just like saying all these things. And I was like, "Oh my God, what's happened?" And then I fell back out of it, and then woke up the next morning. I was in a neck brace, and I like couldn't move my whole body. And my friends that I was with, they would come in one at a time, and they would just break down. They would see me, and they would just start bawling, and they were just like so upset. And I still hadn't seen myself in the mirror, so I didn't know what I actually looked like, and I didn't know what had happened. But I was just like, "It's okay, I'm fine, it's all right, it'll be all right, I'll just go home and I'll heal, and it'll all be okay." And then the next person would come in, and it was the same thing. Yeah. My dad actually ended up coming over to collect me, because they wouldn't let me fly because it was a brain injury. So yeah, they were afraid of clotting. So I had to like stay there for a week before they would let me fly home. And he came in and he did the same thing. He just started like bawling his eyes out. And I'd never seen my dad cry either to that point. Like I'd never seen him cry ever. And I still didn't even shed one tear. I was still like, it's okay. It's all right. I'm okay. You know, it's all good. And I was obviously, I'd just gone through this massive trauma, physical trauma, and I was in this state of trauma. So I couldn't sit there and like feel my emotions at that time. Yeah. But once I had healed, so I miraculously healed without having any surgery or anything done to me. It was a bit of a miracle how I healed. Like the doctor and the surgeon actually couldn't believe how quick I healed and what had happened there. And at that time, my sister, she is a naturopath and she was studying naturopathy, and she would come into my room and she would put all these herbs and give me like flower essence and really work on like a vibrational level to kind of like heal myself. Yeah. And I remember I went to the surgeon. He was like, you're going to need to come back for reconstructive surgery, but you have to wait till the swelling goes down. And I went back to him in 2 weeks and he was like, oh my God, what have you done? He was like, you can have surgery now, but it would be purely like aesthetic. Yeah. And the only thing, I've got a tiny bump in my nose here. You probably can't see, and a scar under here. And that's the only like physical thing that you could really see from the experience. But I was like, no, I just want it to be over. I wanted to sweep it under the carpet and I never wanted to talk about it again. And I literally, that's what I did. I wouldn't speak about it to my family. I wouldn't even speak about it to the girls that were there. Like whenever anyone brought it up, I just went mute and I like couldn't speak about it. And my mum, like probably about 3 months after I had healed, she was like, you know, you haven't spoken to us about any of this. Like, do you want to go see someone? You know, because you've been through this, you're not sharing with us. So like, do you want to speak to someone? And I was like, I actually think I'm okay. Like, I think I'm good. I think I'm just processing it my own way and I'm all right. And it wasn't until about 4 years later when things started to happen. Yeah. And when I say things started to happen, I couldn't lift my arms above my shoulders. I would tweak my neck. And when I say tweak my neck, it would be the slightest movement. And then I would be stiff and it would take me like an hour to get from my bed to the toilet. Yeah, I like literally could barely move. I started getting really bad asthma. I had asthma on and off when I was younger, never super bad, but I started to get really quite bad asthma. And I was just like quite down and I didn't know why. Yeah. And it wasn't, and I spent thousands of dollars trying to like, quote unquote, fix myself because, you know, there's nothing to fix. There's just some stuff we need to kind of work through. But I went to like conventional medicine. I went to doctors. I went and seen physios. I went to see acupuncturists, chiropractors, bowling therapists, kinesiologists. Like I went to see everyone to try and like help me because I was struggling so much in just the way that I was walking. Like my body was just giving way. Like at any second I'd be okay for 2 weeks and then I would be back down. And it wasn't until I actually went back to Bali and I went and saw this amazing man who is now a great mentor and friend. And he is a lot of different things, but basically he's just like a healer. And he works with a craniosacral therapy, which is to do with your nervous system, basically. And I told him, you know, all these things that were happening to me, but I actually didn't even tell him about my accident because that's how far I'd stuffed it down. Yeah, I didn't even think to tell him. And throughout the session, because it's very gentle therapy, they barely touch you. And at the end of it, he was like, what is this massive trauma you've been through and you haven't allowed yourself to feel or even process any of it. And I was like, what? Like, it didn't even click to me straight away, you know? And then I was like, oh my God, okay, the accident. And I was like that client that I held through this. The same thing happened to me. I just started bawling and crying and had this big release, which actually felt so good afterwards. But I was crying for like a good 45 minutes straight, I swear. It just like would not stop. And I'd realized, like, in that 5 years, I hadn't even shed or even allowed myself to feel anything from that specific physical trauma and emotional trauma that I went through. Yeah. And it wasn't like I just had that session and, you know, everything was okay again. Like, I actually had to go back and sort of really unpack, like, okay, what did I feel around this trauma? Like, there was so much shame and guilt and you know, anger and resentment and all these emotions that were attached to this experience that I was just holding in my body. And my body was literally giving me signs that there's like, hey, okay, there's something you really need to look at here. And when I had that experience, I was just like, oh my God, like, I cannot believe that my emotional body, that I'm this unseen, this energetic body of mine is storing all of this. Like, it just completely exploded my mind. And I was like, wow, like, people need to know about this. Yeah, because we're not taught. That's the thing. We're only taught to live from this conscious mind all the time. Majority of us, I'm generalizing. Yeah, but there's so much power in the unseen, and there's so much to unpack there. Yeah. I had to, but I didn't, that was the thing. I didn't have to comfort people, but that was just my belief system. Like, that's how I thought, you know, I was meant to go about this, because I was always like, the keep quiet, don't show your emotions, basically. Yeah. And so the last thing that I want to touch on here before I end is this: with these belief systems, with these things that store within us on a cellular level, we will always find evidence for what we choose to believe. Yeah. And what I mean by that is, if I thought, for example, I wasn't smart enough to have this job, let's say, my brain, my transmitters would literally look for evidence to make that true. Yeah. Look for evidence to make me implant that and believe that. Yeah. So, for an example, if someone walked past me, I was in an office and someone walked past me and I just got this job and I was thinking like, oh my God, I'm not like qualified, or I'm not smart enough to be here, or I don't feel worthy enough, or whatever. And they walk past and they're like, you know, good job on today, but tomorrow, do you think you can maybe change this and shift this around and get here at 8 o'clock? And I take that as like, oh my God, I have to change and shift stuff. They don't think that I can do it. They think I'm not smart enough. They don't think I'm capable enough. Yeah. It's like we attach ourselves to these little things that people say, but this person wasn't saying you're not smart enough. But that's just the way that I took it, because that was my belief system. Yeah. Does that make sense? So you will always find evidence for what you choose to believe. So now that I've said this, I really want you to become aware of how you think. Yeah. Because whatever you believe, you will make sure that you believe that. You will make sure that you find that true, unless you can separate yourself from it. So our thought patterns are so detrimental to our physical body and our happiness and our joy. Yeah. We don't realize how much of an effect our thoughts have on our wellness. Our thoughts have on our overall body. Yeah, you don't realize that until your physical body gets taken away and you can't run away from stuff. That's the only time that you will really, really notice that. And I've been there. That's happened to me. Yeah. And you're the way that you think about yourself and the way that you think about your environment and who you're surrounded with, it literally affects every part of you. Yeah. So if you're constantly there thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy enough, like, you're never going to feel worthy. Yeah. You're not even going to be able to connect with yourself because you're judging yourself and you're critiquing yourself. And this isn't necessarily your fault, because from such a young age, we are told and taught to change or fix or morph ourselves in some way to fit a certain type of identity or a certain box that's considered successful, you know? And so I really just wanted to finish with this. And because the way that we think, again, has such an effect on our overall health. So when you are getting those, glistenings or little glimmers of judgment, I want you to just be like, actually, that's not serving me. And I can do this. And I wouldn't be here if I couldn't do it. The universe wouldn't deliver if I couldn't do it. Yeah, I want you to just physically, just go like this out of your head. Yeah. And the next thing I want to share is I just want to give you some journal prompts. And the reason I do this is just so I've really just planted a tiny seed today, on this whole realm and what we can unpack and what we can move through to live a more flowing, harmonious, happy life. Yeah. And so some of these things are just tools to make you reflect on maybe how you show up. Yeah. And then there's some other tools to help you to start to implement some things within your life. So this first one here, how do I betray myself? Yeah. So how do I betray myself in my work, in my relationships, in my family, and in my body? For an example, in my work, it would be, every Monday we sit down to a team meeting and I've got all these really good ideas, but I never speak up because I'm scared I'm going to get rejected. Yeah. So maybe there's an underlining fear of rejection under there. Yeah. In my relationships. So this can be intimate relationship or friendships. In my relationships, I am always giving. I'm always giving myself so much, and I'm not necessarily getting that in return. Yeah, my needs aren't necessarily getting met. So that's actually betraying yourself, because you're bleeding yourself and forgetting about your worth and what you need and what you need to fill yourself up. Yeah. In family, it would be similar situation. And then in my body, it's okay, I wake up every morning, I look in the mirror and I tell myself I'm overweight or I'm not pretty enough. or whatever. I critique myself in some way. Yeah, so that's betraying yourself because you're just punishing yourself for no good reason. Yeah. Does that make sense? So I want you to spend a little bit of time on this, because I don't just want you to like answer really quickly. Like I actually want you to sit and to kind of close your eyes and be like, okay, how am I betraying myself in my body? And just sort of see what comes up, because more stuff will come up. Yeah. Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, it's a good one. So the next thing there is 5 tools to help release or move energy. And what I mean by this is it's when we're kind of get in our funk and we're in that really stagnated space and we can't necessarily move through. Yeah, so this isn't avoiding or suppressing, but it's just allowing some fog to clear so we can take a breath. Yeah. So what actually helps me shift energy? So this cannot be the red wine or the chocolate or the corn chips or whatever you're into. It's something either out in nature or something creative. Yeah. So for example, my biggest one is getting in the ocean. So I'm really lucky. I live near the ocean. So I go for a swim, or I'll go for a surf or something. And that completely shifts my frequency. Yeah, the ocean, like with the salt and the minerals, it automatically like shifts your frequency on a physiological level, but it just helps clear my energy as well. Yeah. Another one of mine is I love moving my body. So I love to dance. Yeah. So I will just put music on and I will just move my body however I feel like I need to, even if it's just shaking around or jumping around. Yeah. Because again, it just shifts your frequency. Yeah. Some people love to paint. Some people love to sing. Some people, and you don't have to be good at any of these either. It's just the expression of getting it out of your body. Yeah. One of mine is cooking too. I love to cook, and cooking is really creative and inspiring for me. It's quite meditative. Yeah. So when I'm cooking a really beautiful meal, I'm come completely out of my head. Yeah. Another one is just going out in nature and just walking around or just sitting. Yeah. Things like, meditation and yoga and breathing are obviously amazing, but I want you to think of some other ones. Like I want you to think of some things that really help you, because they'll be different for everyone. Yeah. And then the next one there is, how can I love myself more? So I put this in because, just like I said, we are our own worst enemy. If my best friend, spoke to me the way that I speak to myself, or used to speak to myself, I would never be friends with her, right? Because she's so judgmental. She's so critical. She's kind of mean. Yeah. And I want you to start to treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. So how can I love myself more? What can you implement in your daily routine, in your daily life? Can be really small, really simple. That's going to allow this love and this honor and this empowerment and respect to come in. Yeah. So that could be as simple as, every morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to look at myself in the mirror and I'm going to tell myself that I love myself. Or it could be, every morning I'm going to sit down to 5 minutes of meditation because I know it's an act of self-love and self-care. Or every morning I'm just going to touch my body and feel myself and connect to my physical body and just honor like this amazing vessel that I've been blessed with. Or it could be, I'm going to treat myself to the spa once a month because I deserve it. And that's something that I really love doing. Yeah, whatever it is for you. And then the next thing there is who is in my support network. So this is an interesting one because sometimes it's not the people that you think you would pick. So for an example, my friend, let's say my sister, for example, I'm quite close to my sister, yeah? But she's very invested in my life, as in she cares about me a lot, and she's like, there's so much love there, right? If something happens to me and I'm telling her about it, she might just stoke the fire and make it even worse. So for an example, if I was like, you know, my partner's just cheated on me and this has happened, you know, something that's not nice. And she's like, oh my God, like so angry. I can't believe he did that. Like, how could he do that? And she would just get so angry and just add to your rage, and she would stoke your fire and fire you up. When really at that time, all you need is someone to listen to you. Yeah, someone who's not so involved. Or if they are, you can be before the conversation, be like, look, I really want to tell you something, but I don't need any advice. I don't want your opinion. I don't want you to stoke the fire. I just really need you to hold space for me right now. And I really need you to hold me in what I'm going through without giving me anything. Yeah, but just that support. And then you can go on and say something. Or it might be like, okay, I actually need more help. I need to go see a therapist or a physician or a mentor or whatever road that you want to go down. I need to see someone that's actually had experience and knows what they're talking about. Yeah, so I want you to really kind of solidify the answers to these, because some of them are just going to help you when you are going through something, and those first ones are really going to help you unpack some of the underlying belief systems and some of the underlying stored or unprocessed emotions that we're not allowing ourselves to feel. And the thing with those stored emotions is like, you actually have to feel your emotions for them to process. Yeah, things like happiness, joy, love, like we don't need to think about that because they feel good and we like to feel like that. So they automatically process through our body. But things like shame, guilt, heartbreak, you know, it's like this, it's hard and it's uncomfortable. But if we just allow ourselves to sit, start to get comfortable in the uncomfortability, our lives will change. Yeah, we'll become so much more harmonious and so much more free flowing, and you'll be able to open your heart and live a more love-filled, purposeful life. Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in and for listening. If there's any questions, you can just write them in the chat now. But if there's not, I might just leave you there. Amazing. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.